Dear Carrie, I have a client with autism who uses delayed echolalia to communicate. He will repeat whole sentences he's heard in the past. For example, if he wants something you have, he will walk up and say, "Do you want it?" How can I help him come up with his own utterances? Signed, Functional Communicator. Hi there, Carrie Clark here with Speech and Language Kids, and welcome to the Dear Carrie advice column for SLPs. I am going to answer this question here about delayed echolalia and gestalt language processing here in just a second. But if you have a question that you would like me to answer on the Dear Carrie segment, you can leave that in the comments of this video. So if you are watching it on the website, click over to YouTube and leave that in the comments. Leave your question in the comments and I will pull from those for future videos. All right, now let's talk about this. So what is being described here is called gestalt language processing, and it's a form of echolalia that children sometimes use to communicate with others. This is more common in children with autism than other types of children, but there are definitely variations to that, of course, and not all children with autism will learn to communicate this way. But the general idea is that these children, instead of starting by learning single words, like we see in a lot of language development, instead of learning words one at a time, they learn it in chunks, and we call those gestalts. So instead of learning car, they learn, "Do you want it?" So these children will repeat these sentences, the whole word for word sentence, and they will use that functionally. Sometimes they will use it non-functionally. But a lot of times it's to communicate something. So in this example, "Do you want it?" That's what that child hears when he wants something. So he has learned that unit as how you communicate that need. What this tells us is that the child is learning language and they're just learning it in a different way. So there is actually a structure for how we teach children to learn language in this way and how we teach them to create their own utterances. Now, the first tip I would give you for this one is to start saying things the way you want the child to say it if they are doing this type of echolalia or repeating you. So instead of saying, "Do you want it?" if you're holding something you know the child wants, you would say, "I want it." And you would provide that model so that the child can imitate that. Now, I will also show you, so this is the Speech and Language Kids website. If you go to speechandlanguagekids.com and type in echolalia, you will find this page. You can also click on the link below the video if you're over on YouTube. But if you scroll down about halfway, I think, there's lots of different suggestions in here for other types of echolalia that children might be using. But here's where we have the gestalt language processing for autistic children. So for this example, oops, I'm going to make me a little smaller. So for this, you can see we just kind of have a description of how this learning looks. And I give the example of "Let's eat and it's time to go." So the way that gestalt learning happens is they learn first in chunks and then they figure out how to break those chunks into smaller chunks and rearrange them. So if you have modeled things like "Let's eat" and "It's time to go," then when that child gets to the next level, they'll be able to recombine those language units to make new sentences like "It's time to eat" and "Let's go." So that is generally how therapy looks for this. We are going to model things that we want the child to repeat that can then be easily rearranged and broken down to create new utterances. So this is the echolalia course that we have, and if you want access to that, it's up here at the top of this page. You can click there to get access. But I'm just going to show you this piece because I think this is the piece that's most helpful for this. So these are the 6 phases of gestalt language learning. So first they start off with communicative use of whole language gestalts. This is the "Do you want it?" This is the entire language sentence or chunk that they are using to communicate a want or need. So they start with that. We don't start with single words. We start with these chunks. Then the next phase, number 2, is mitigation into chunks and recombining chunks. So we're taking the whole language gestalt, the whole sentence, and breaking it up into smaller pieces. So for example, instead of "It's time to eat" and "Let's go," we break those into pieces, we rearrange them, and now we have "It's time to go" and "Let's eat." So we are able to recombine. Stage 3 is further mitigation by isolating words or recombining into 2-word utterances. So now we're breaking it down not into the chunks like "It's time to," but into specific single words and recombining those words into two-word phrases. So you can see here, if you're a speech-language pathologist, you're familiar with this stage right here, two-word utterances, because that's what we normally do with children after they're at the one-word utterance, as we start to build two-word utterances. We're just kind of breaking it down from longer pieces to shorter, and then we're going to build it back up. So now that we've been able to recombine into two-word utterances, now we're going to start generating our own first sentences, so creating longer utterances, and then working on more complex sentences from there. So we kind of start big, break it down into single words, and then build it back up. So that's the general flow when you're working with a child with Gestalt language processing. Okay, so that's where I'm going to leave you for now. There are, like I said, there's these free resources over on this Echolalia page on Speech and Language Kids. We also have that course if you need it, but that is the general overview of how you work on building that language up for a child who is learning language in gestalts, or these longer sentences, and how we break it down and then build it back up. All right. You can find that at speechandlanguagekids.com. Type in Echolalia in the search bar or use the link below the video. Again, if you have a question that you would like me to answer on the Dear Carrie segment, go ahead and type that into the comments below the video over on YouTube or on social media, and we'll be watching for those, and I will grab from those as I am creating future videos. All right, thanks so much and have a wonderful day.